here with Austin Harrison, co-founder of Northbeam, one of our favorite third-party tracking platforms. I try not to play favorites here. I try to be like Switzerland on perpetual traffic. But obviously you're here. We've had other third-party tracking platforms on the show as well. But the question that I think is on a lot of people's minds is at what point do I need this? At what point do I need a deeper level of tracking? And because when I think about businesses in general, and we run the span, like we have a very much a startup, local, regional type of customer that we have an entire division for. They do not need what we're talking about here today because they're not at that level.
Right.
Would it help? Yes, it would help, but it might be cost prohibitive. So maybe if we can sort of explain in your mind, like at what level do you see it? Because obviously Northbeam deals with some massive customers, like enterprise level, but you also have an understanding of probably that mid-market, maybe less so on the smaller market because it's not real. This isn't really the tool necessarily for them. If you've got a, if you've got a pizza parlor down the corner, you probably don't need Northbeam to track your customers, is my guess.
Yeah.
But like at what level of revenue or aggressiveness from a business owner perspective should you start to consider a third-party tracking platform? Because it starts to get muddy at a certain point, especially when you have all types of media channels. You've got email, you've got Amazon, you've got, Google, you've got Facebook, obviously, you've got all the meta platforms. So sort of talk to me about, how you view it as a worldview when a business probably needs something like a Northbeam.
Yeah, I think it's a really important topic because, the last thing we want is, we don't want folks paying for Northbeam or any other software tool that does attribution and what we do now, forecasting and modeling. So outside of just pure attribution is kind of where Northbeam is focused. So forecasting revenue for the month and the future. You could argue, conceptually that sounds good for any business, right? But we feel that it's not really the size of the business in terms of revenue, but it's their focus on scaling or investment in scaling. So are you going to invest in 5, 10 channels, Amazon, YouTube, Meta, TikTok, Pinterest, TV? Like how aggressively are you going to scale? Because if you're just going to kind of move along slowly, we would discourage you from using Northbeam or another tool, right? If your efficiency is really high and you're just you've got your system dialed in and you feel like you're in a good place, we would also discourage you from, paying for Northbeam or anything else, right? It's really when it's not even the revenue size, it's when you're really going to press on the gas and invest in scaling, right? And if you're a business that wants to, keep it simple, which we think is great, there's nothing wrong with that, then it's nice to have Northbeam, or any other software tool, but we think people can survive without it.
You get to a level where you all of a sudden you're no longer dependent on just one channel. So it sort of seems like as soon as that happens, from my perspective, I mean, everyone sort of gets, brand name search and some level of, branded SEO. So there's going to always be that on that side of the equation. But let's say if you're running meta ads and that's it, and you don't have any sort of marketing mix whatsoever, but maybe you've scaled up, you've gotten to a point like, I have a call with a potential customer in a couple of hours, like they're spending anywhere between $300,000 and $1 million a month. And it's all on Meta, really, basically. Maybe a little bit of Google branded search. And things are getting a little cloudy here because, they collect emails like we talked about, right at the beginning of the show. They want to be able to attribute like where is that email sale coming from? And at about a couple 100,000, they want to double that. It's a $30 million business. They want to go from 30 to $60 million. Like they're a candidate for a third-party attribution tool, but Are they coming to the party a little bit late, in your opinion, or should they have done that a little bit earlier? Because it's not always an accurate picture just on one platform, obviously, as you know.
Yeah, I mean, the advantage of a third party tool, whether it's Northbeam or something that is in our sphere, would be a longer attribution window, right? So, you know, Meta's attribution window is 7 day. You've got a 7 day window. If you're spending that much money and you want to see your return after 30 or 60 days, um, you know, that's something that is important, right? Especially at that spend level, right? Because if you have a high AOV, right? So if you're selling something that's 8, $10, $12, maybe you're capturing a lot of that value within that 7 days of the spend, right? But if the AOV is higher and the consideration cycle is longer, or there's a lot of repeat purchasing, then it's good to implement something third party. But again, there's always ways to hack it yourself, I believe, that may or may not be sufficient, depending on how you do it. If you're on one channel, right?
Mhm.
But I think I don't think it's too late. I don't think it's too late to get tracking in order, and I think it can help you figure out which campaigns are the ones to scale or which ads faster when you're really investing in growth. So we have a customer, just to give you context, um, over Labor Day weekend, they spent $120,000 on Meta in that day. And they actually wanted to spend, and they were using Northbeam to calibrate throughout the day and adjusting spend per campaign per ad based on our data flowing through. Um, and so that's on a daily basis, right? They're spending a lot. They wanted to actually spend more. Um, and so that's a whole nother can of worms. But I think that's where Northbeam gives you signal when you're really investing on so like Black Friday, Cyber Monday, big sale periods. You're getting very fast signal through Northbeam.
So it's attribution window. It's your customer life cycle from first touch to final purchase is a factor here as well. So if it's beyond that 7 day,
Right.
let's just say in the 7 day, the Meta advertiser. I mean,
Yeah.
we have a fair amount of customers that do offline conversions and use the 90-day window for offline, which is super, super helpful. But I mean, in most
Yeah.
cases, if you're getting if you're a $10, $20, $30 product and people are typically going to convert, it's not a higher consideration purchase. 7 days can pretty much cover it for you, and you don't necessarily need it, all things being equal, is what I'm hearing.
I think so. I mean, if you have a high repurchase rate, that could be different, right? Like I looked inside of Northbeam for one of our customers, and I looked, 18 months later at their Meta ROAS on one particular ad set, and it was like more than 2x what it was. I think it went from, you know, a 2 to a 4.3 or something like that over an 18-month span. So if you're planning and doing business planning, you're trying to figure out, okay, if I invest in growth now, what's that going to look like in 4 months, in 6 months, in 8 months? If you're doing kind of overall business planning, I think that's all, even if your AOV is small, like we're talking about, if there's a repeat purchase rate or you're upselling or whatever the case may be, then you may want to have a longer window too. So there's exceptions to that kind of low AOV rule. Right.
Yeah. And it also depends on, and we talked to owners about this, is like investing in that front end, maybe not, maybe not quite yet conversion layer. I mean, we call that sort of the awareness or consideration phase,
Yeah.
and investing more there uh, if you have the war chest to invest as well. I mean, let's not forget, like if you're investing in $1 million, a month in YouTube ads, but your life cycle it's a 6 to 9 month cycle. That's a lot of
Right.
advertising that you have to front or get from venture capital or bootstrap on your own in order to make that business really work. So current finances, present day, has a lot to do with it. I mean, is this the type of conversations that you oftentimes have with Northbeam customers, like they're asking you, like, what should I do here? And
Yeah.
the answer is always, yeah, it depends in a lot of different scenarios. But how do you advise people on that to be able to be comfortable with investing today, even if they don't see the return, outside of the 7-day window, for example, for maybe the smaller businesses, but like if it's 30, 60, 90 days, like how do you talk to them about that? Because you're always
Yeah.
sort of taking that risk. You never really know if that email that you collect today is the one that's actually going to create the sale 30, 60, 90 days down the road.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm a big fan of a lot of experimentation, right? Trying a lot of different things. The one advantage of, the one great thing about Northbeam I've over the last, 4.5 years is just seeing brands go from, 5 million to 50 million or 15 million to 180 million in revenue. We've watched a lot of brands go through that journey of scale, in their scale process. And the common theme is lots of experimentation with different channels, right? Meaning trying influencer, trying YouTube, trying TikTok, trying new creative, trying new, really experimenting on a micro scale with a lot of different things, and then looking for a signal to see, okay, what's working, what isn't. And sometimes it's all of those things together is what finally turns where they turn the corner, right? So like you could just do YouTube and you're doing okay. There's a small blip, but then YouTube influencer. And now your YouTube paid is lifted by your YouTube influencer and vice versa. Now the two together are driving me, right? Versus one or the other on their own, right? Weren't cutting it. So you're looking for that media mix, right? It's not, everyone's looking for like that one thing. It's like, oh, if I just do this one thing, my business is going to take off.
Right.
That's rarely the case. Are there exceptions? Sure. But from what I've seen, of course there's exceptions with products that go viral. But like when you think about the long-term sustainable brands, they develop a mix and a playbook that lifts overall NDR or ROAS, right? And they're all working like a symphony is the idea. And that's learning it's almost like building your orchestra, right? What is my orchestra for my brand and my industry, right? And so figuring that out is kind of the key. And of course, if you're smaller, you want to investigate what the successful brands are, what is the orchestra? Do I need a violin? Do I need a cello? Do I need a flute in my particular industry? And then you start to experiment within those. But it's tricky, right? Because it'd be nice if it was just one thing. Okay, I'm just going to launch on this one channel and now I'm all set. I'm just going to spend. Can it happen? Yes. But generally speaking, for the long term, you need to develop a media mix that is going to work for you.
I think it's a great analogy. I have a visualization here of, the conductor in the orchestra, and then they have one violin. Like that's your first like Facebook campaign, and then you get more scale.
Yeah.
You add more budget. Now you have two violins. Now you do some lateral scaling. You add some more audiences. You get some different messaging. Now you've got 3 or 4 violins, but now you've got, what is that? Is when there's like 3 or 4 violins together and nothing else. Is that a concerto? I don't even know. I know nothing about classical music.
Getting into another question, one thing I thought was interesting, so Northbeam just rolled out, they now have 1-day benchmarks, which is pretty cool because a lot of us have used Northbeam and we're doing that calculation manually. So they have that. Actually, they just rolled out subscription capabilities too, which is pretty cool. But you have a point about